Labą dieną, aš esu Aidas Puklevičius ir noriu jums pristatyti pokalbį su Nilsu Sakss ir Jurģis Liepnieks apie jų naują, ji išleista Latvijoje 2014 metais, išversta į lietuvių kalbą visai neseniai. Pokalbį mes pratęsime Vilniaus knygų mugėje, tačiau dabar šiek tiek norėtume pašnekėti, and I will switch to English now after making a short introduction. So, hi Nils, hi Jurģis. And since you are new to the Lithuanian reading public, let's start with introduction about how your backgrounds are quite different. So let me ask you a little bit about your background. Nils, let's start with you, and then Jurģis will move to you.
Good morning. Well, my background is pretty much in writing and psychology, and I work as a child psychotherapist right now in Riga, Latvia. So that's what I do for a living, but I've been always writing. I began writing in high school, and I did that professionally for quite a few years. That was actually how we met with Jurģis, because some of the stuff that I wrote was for media, and those were opinion pieces. And stuff about politics and culture and all that. So I was sort of established in the media scene before I moved into psychotherapy practice. But and actually, well, this somehow connects to the book that we're talking about, because one of the main characters there, it's actually taken from real life setting, and that was while I was studying in London. I was actually studying psychology and psychotherapy there, so so there's a link between that. But and I had some short story collections published before, but this was sort of the major, the first, and so far the only novel, so to say, that I managed to write.
Jurģis, let's move to you.
Yes, I am a public relations advisor, and actually my main area of interest is always was and are politics. I work with politicians a lot. I work with political parties. I worked for government, for prime ministers. I was advisor of two of them, I think, and advisor of a few ministers, etc., etc. I was a head of election campaigns, and so politics are my. I am not a politician myself. I never did it for myself, but so it's what I'm doing for a living.
So both of you have been dealing with damaged souls and damaged personalities for quite some time. You with general psychotherapy and you with politicians. That's what point which unites you. And how did you come up with the idea to write a novel together?
So no, I think it's a passion for writing. I think it's what it is. It's a common passion for writing, for literature, and you know, it's quite irrational. There is no much point for writing novels nowadays. It's just you want to do it. Yeah, it's there is no money in this. There is no,
well, unless you are J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, of course there is exceptions. Yeah, of course there is 100 book or probably, I don't know, 10 books a year. Yeah, in whole world who are very successful. But generally, it's for passionate fanatics who just want to write a book, and there is I cannot find much rationality in this, and I don't and I cannot explain very explicitly what is the reason why I am doing this. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I just really love to do this. And yes, this is my first book, and now I am writing a second one, and so.
But this one you are writing already alone?
Yes, this time, and I know Nils is writing too. Yeah, it was a very great experience to write together, and I think there is in some aspects easier to write together. Yeah, probably it's the same way easier as it is easier, for example, to commit to running or to sports. It's easier to run together.
You mean that if one is missing deadlines,
yes,
another one is pressing, hey, come on, give him one page, give him one page, give him one
exactly.
More page.
Yes, exactly. And what is and the second aspect, what I think is very important, you give a reader two voices. There is two voices in the book.
That's what I wanted to ask, Nils. People, I mean, general reading public, they sometimes see names of two authors on a cover, and we always wonder, how do they do that? Whether one is responsible for vowels, another for consonants, one is responsible for every odd sentence, another for every even sentence, or let me make an educated guess. We have two major plots here. One plot taking place in UK and another plot taking place in Latvia. My guess is that Jurgis was writing the plot in Latvia, you were writing the plot in UK.
Well, that is a very educated guess, but I think that's something that I'd also like to leave for the reader's imagination, because I know from my own experience, whenever I read a book by two or more authors, and there are actually not so many of them, I think so. It's always something that adds to the imagination, because that's an additional thing in the reader's mind, just guessing who's talking now, and how did they put this all together. I think that just adds to the whole thing. It's sort of an excitement to guess, very much as in a crime novel, and this is sort of a crime novel where you're guessing who did what and who did that. And you're also, this sort of lets you also guess a bit how did they put that together and who's writing which part. But yeah, I think this was very much a very collaborative experience. And for me, I've been always writing short forms, like opinion pieces, short stories. And I think that's actually something that you just told me, that we always gravitate towards the area of our least expertise. And I think I'm very inexperienced in long forms. And I've also read an interview by, I forgot what her name was, but it was a short story writer and a Nobel Prize winner. And she said that whenever she begins a short story, in her mind, she thinks it's going to be a novel. She's saying that right now, well, this time I'm going to make it. This is going to be a novel. And she never makes it. It's always a short story. And she's 90 years of age now, and she's never written a single novel. And
the clock is ticking, and the clock is ticking. Okay, but still, talking a little bit more about this collaborative process. I understand, as I made this educated guess, that one of you was dealing with one major subplot, and so on. But still, probably you had some fights over creative ideas of how these plots should touch each other, intertwine, and you also criticized the product. Each of you will be dealing and suggesting how it could be improved, and so on and so on. So I'm just wondering how this process takes place, in what form.
Yeah, it's really very, very close collaboration. It's not technically, it's not just you write a chapter, I write a chapter, we put it together, we have two chapters. Of course not. Of course not. We did a lot of talking. We did a lot of thinking what a plot will be, how it will evolve, what will come next, etc., etc. And of course, we made a lot of suggestions to each other, and actually editing of each other, yeah. And so it's really collaboration, and I was very happy because Nils have a bigger experience, in literature, and he has published books before, so and it was very helpful for me. So we we really did it together. We did it together.
It's always difficult to talk about book without revealing too much detail and without spoiling, since I believe there is a special circle in hell reserved for spoilers, and I will try to refrain from spoiling, but still I would venture another guess about this book, that when you were writing, you intended this for a larger audience, not only Latvia, since like such a giveaway points, like when describing Laima, you say that it is Latvian, the most famous Latvian brand. When describing history of Shapiro family, you describe Soviet era deficits. I mean, these things which are familiar to all people who lived in this area of the world, but which are not familiar to the Western public. So am I right saying that you always planned for wider international waters with this book?
There is two aspects. I think one is you should mention generation. There is some aspects and information what is absolutely understandable and obvious for our generation, but probably not so for our kids or people 10 years, 15 years younger. So it was one aspect about what we are thinking, yeah? And yes, some kind of abstraction, some kind of we wanted to look at us from somewhere above, something not from. Yes, it's kind of important that people, not only people in Latvia, could understand what it is about. Yes, it is important.
I just wanted to ask who from you both came up with the idea describing the boy as dressed for a party as a Robert Smith from The Cure, since this is also a very generational point. I believe most of millennials will say, who the hell is Robert Smith?
It's true. Yeah, it's a small detail. I used to listen to The Cure in high school, so it was out of fashion by then. Like nobody knew The Cure in my grade, so it was very trendy. But I thought it added a quite nice detail. But I also like to add a bit to what you just talked about, and I think obviously I think both of us are very competitive, and when we wrote this, we wanted one part of this was sort of as a challenge. As whether we can actually write something that could be considered a best-selling novel, that could be interesting for people outside Latvia. And well, I hope our conversation proves that we were right. but it's also a great exercise, and I've been living probably for most of my life somewhere outside the country of my birth. And it's very interesting to sort of take this perspective and to think about how do others see me and how do others perceive me and the stuff that I take for granted. And that was a very interesting experience to write about something that we know very well through the eyes of a foreigner, somebody who sees it for the first time. And that somehow lets you to see those things in a different light, in a different perspective.
There is a school of thought among historians who say that only the foreigner, outsider, is the best place to write history of a nation, like it was with Norman Davis writing history of Poland and so on. They are more objective, and they are less attached to certain stereotypes, predispositions, and things like that. I'm not sure whether this school applies to fiction, but nonetheless, when you were writing, I mean, I believe there are very few writers who want to produce a purely commercial product, successful and so on. They always want this to be like a trampoline to a general fiction about ideas, about experiences, about transformation of their heroes. So where also you're trying to combine those commercial appeal of crime element with things which are, I would say, not as thrilling as those which lead humanity in the course of times, like death, betrayal, and so on, loss.
You know, I don't know. From me, it was literature as entertainment, and actually we wanted to write book not a book great novel of all times. No, it's not a competition with Dostoevsky or Proust or I don't know, Hemingway. No, it's competition with your everyday sitcom in TV or social networks or some bullshit in Facebook or something like this. We are competing for your time, for this time, for entertainment time, and no, it was not intended to be great literary achievement and something like this. So I would not agree that every writer want to be.
No, not every, but majority of them are silently dreaming about that.
Yeah, probably. No, not in this. In my opinion, I don't know what Nils, but in my opinion, it was not that that ambition. No, there was ambition to deliver good time, to deliver some kind of entertainment.
So now I would like to discover a split between your opinions and Nils admitting that he silently was dreaming about winning Man Booker International with this book.
Well, I will completely agree that our ambition wasn't to compete with Dostoevsky. However, I do believe in quality entertainment, and I do think that entertainment is a great vehicle for disseminating various ideas. And I work with young people mostly. My area of expertise is adolescent therapy. So I talk about very serious things, and usually we use pop culture as a reference, or video games, and we talk about death and rebirth and the sense of life, the meaning of life. When we talk about Warcraft or Minecraft and stuff like that. So I do believe that I actually think that if you want to really express great ideas, it makes more sense to write a sort of a book on philosophy or something like that, so probably an opinion piece in a magazine. And if you write a book for large audience, it has to be entertaining, but it doesn't mean that it has to be void of great ideas. And one of the great ideas that we look at in this book, and I mean, is rebirth. And it's something very, very fundamental to human thought. And you can talk about that in various philosophical, theological treatise, and you can also talk about that in this way, and I think they're both very valid. And to my mind,
that's what I want to ask. Christopher Booker, when he wrote his seminal work, 7 Basic Plots, which he wrote for 30 years, he differentiated 7 basic plots, like overcoming the monster, all the Bond movies, and so on, then There and Back, then Quest, From Rags to Riches, Cinderella, tragedy, comedy, and rebirth. Does it mean that we can classify your book Mirtis, Tai Ne Pabaiga, that's Lithuanian name for the book, as rebirth story? Or it also contains elements of the quest, elements of overcoming the monster, elements of tragedy, comedy, and Cinderella is absent.
And elements of sex, of course.
Well, sex could be present in any of those plots.
Yes, it was not. I think it was not our idea to somehow to be in one of the 7 plots, but if you say so, yes, why not? If you say so, it could be so.
But I think it definitely is a book about rebirth, and in more sense than one, because it's also about, there's a theme of the rebirth of a country. We're talking about how country sort of gives new birth to itself. There's also the theme of professional rebirth. Sarah, coming from England, she becomes new. She has to find her new identity. So there are various sub-themes of rebirth. I very much like your idea. I mean, that's
and of course, Colonel, who is actually originally Soviet army colonel, and then he rebirths in the free Latvia.
And rebirths in free Latvia, but despite that, he is followed, chased by a lot of repressed sexual things. And that's what I wanted to ask. You just mentioned sex, but I wanted to ask whether sex here is another selling instrument for selling the plot, selling the story, or whether it has to do with this Freudian idea that a lot of things which happen to us and which happen within our minds are related to all these repressed sexual deviations, dreams, and things like that, which we experience in our adolescence, and so on and so on and so on. And sometimes things which happen to us today are the result of these things which happened to us in the past, even regarding our sexuality.
I think Oscar Wilde said that everything in this world is about sex, except sex, which is about power. But it's exactly Nils' field of experience, and so Nils, I think, will explain it.
Well, sex is also something very hard to explain. But I think Freud overemphasized the sort of the importance of sex. I would believe that the drive to be close and the drive to be aggressive, those are the two main forces. And I think sex, as you just said, is just one part of our life where sort of both those come together. It's aggression, and it's also the need to be too close to somebody, and that's why it's so powerful and so much energy. But I think that in this sense we also find that sex is an entertainment. Sort of, it can be entertaining, and there's no way around it. That's just something that really draws our attention across time for various reasons, and it's also very hard to find the true balance, sort of. And I think when this book came out, it was about the time when 50 Shades of Grey was also published. So there was a lot of talk about sex in literature and vice versa. So it was very interesting to see how sex scenes actually work in a book. And I have to admit, that's one of probably the toughest things in writing, to actually write something which is sexy and not just plain silly or pornographic. And
yeah, I had that problem in my second novel when people read it and said, shooting is okay, chasing is okay, car chases are okay, geopolitics are okay, but sex, come on. Yeah, I know. But then you said about this balance between being close and aggression. I just recall that you're probably describing two different tribes of primates, bonobos, who achieve everything through social relationship and sex, and chimpanzees who are on the hand very aggressive and so on. So like two sides of one coin. And another example would be the name of the most famous self-help book, since all others are just repetition of this book, Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends and do influence other people. Here again we have social and so on. But nonetheless, coming back to your book again, there's a saying that in Hollywood that if you want to pitch a script, you have first of all to pitch it in one sentence, two sentences, three sentences, one paragraph at the most. If you would have to pitch this book to a Lithuanian reader, how would you describe what it is about, book, and why they should read it?
Well, first of all, it's a crime novel. I think it's important. It is a crime novel. There is a crime, and there is mysterious line of reincarnation. What is related to this crime? So I think this is two lines.
Nils?
Yeah, and there's also some sex.
Yes.
Okay, crime, soul reincarnation, and sex.
Yes, it's fair enough. Yes.
Yeah, quite. But they're thinking also when you were writing this novel that how your writing style and so on corresponds to the writing across the pond. I mean, to the Nordic noir genre, which is extremely popular. Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, Icelandic, even some Finnish writers are, I mean, they're not as popular as they used to be like 5 years ago. But nonetheless, Nordic noir is an established genre. And do you think that Latvian crime writing could be part of Nordic noir, or whether it's a little bit different?
We actually read a lot of Nordic noir when we were writing this, and when we were preparing for the novel. So obviously this is something that's in the background and something that we can compare. I have to admit that I'm not a huge fan of Nordic noir. I find it rather plain for my taste. But I do admire the success that it has generated, and I think that's something that small countries like Latvia, Lithuania, that we all can learn from their publishers and how they manage to generate so much success for their writers, and that's amazing. But I think that I'd rather like to think of Baltic noir, because I think that what we have, I mean, it makes much sense, and it's probably the greatest wisdom to use the strength that you have. And I think our strength is our experience with the Soviet experience and the post-Soviet experience, the sort of Eastern European vibe, as you might put it. And I think that is something that comes together in our novel as well. It's the noir from the Nordic side, but there's also some very Eastern European sort of stuff that I would think people from outside this area would find rather exotic.
Double noir. One noir from the climate and another noir from historical experience.
Yeah, but it's important question, and we really ask themselves what is the reason why Scandinavians are so successful in global book market, yeah, and why we cannot. Why there is not Baltic writers and Baltic novels which are really successful in world? Why we cannot? We should. There is nothing so special, nothing so in this Scandinavian novels and crime fiction. Theoretically, we should be able to do the same. So yes, it is question, and we would like to we really like to think about it and ask it to writers in Baltics what we are doing wrong, or what is the reason why we are not successful at that rate what Scandinavians are. So and I think we should be. We should be. We should look at this and try to compete. Yes, try to compete and try to probably be better. So yes, it's important question.
I would like to wish you every success in becoming Baltic noir and becoming icebreaker in Baltic noir. Since in my experience following literary market and so on, it always requires an icebreaker. I believe Stieg Larsson with his trilogy became such an icebreaker for Nordic noir. Before him, there were a lot of writers, Legberg, Åke Edvardsson, and so on, but they were not so successful until Stieg Larsson came posthumously with his trilogy. So I believe that every success story requires an icebreaker, and I wish you to become such an icebreaker. And if not with this book, then with those second novels you are writing right now. Okay, guys, it was great talking to you, and see you in Vilnius at Vilnius Book Fair. We could have our conversation even at more length.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
And see you. Yeah.